everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and we like to watercolor. We do a different project every week. We break it down step by step. We teach you how to do it. We tell you what we use, so no matter where you are, you can paint with us. This is what we're painting today, the seahorse. Very nice. And yes. Can you make that noise for me? You nailed it. That's exactly what they do. Okay. We are using 2 paintbrushes in this tutorial. We have a round 6 and a round 2 from Princeton. They are the Heritage 4050 series. These are excellent brushes. If you're struggling with your paintbrush, like you have hair falling out or the point is not staying pointy, try these brushes. Oh. Because these are really great quality brushes. We are using 3 colors. Our very first color is pink. Now this is a very light value color naturally. This is like the darkest it goes right here. So I know when we're used to a color like magenta, like look how dark that is. Okay, that's a huge difference. So I just want you to know that if your pink looks like this, it should. That's just the color of it naturally, and that's okay. And then our third color we're using is deep yellow. Gosh, these colors are so good. I love them. Okay, now we have 6 steps for this project. The very first step is we are going to do an all over pink wash on our seahorse. I was about to call it a sunflower. The second one, we're going to put in these like ridges. I'm calling them ridges. That makes sense.
What else would they be?
I don't know.
Are they veins?
No.
They're not bones.
Ooh.
I know nothing.
Keenan, you went too far. Third step, we're going to do the shading on the belly and the shading on the chin. The fourth step, we will do the head here, including the eye. The 5th step, we'll do the fin. And the 6th step is going to be the splatters. Okay, now I've already started with the outline on my paper. You can get the outline for our seahorse on our website. Just go to letsmakeart.com, find the seahorse project, download the outline and print. I transferred it using graphite paper. If you don't know how to use graphite paper, you can Google it. But pretty much put your outline on top, put your graphite paper underneath, make a mark. Whatever mark you make, it will transfer to your paper. I traced a little bit darker so you can see what I'm doing, but when you're doing this at home, try and trace as lightly as possible because watercolor is transparent, so you will see these graphite lines underneath your painting. Okay. Also, if you need a demonstration on how to use graphite paper, if you look on our YouTube channel and tune in on any of the live paint-alongs, I actually trace the image during the live paint-along so you can see how to do that. You have options, is what I'm saying. You will be successful. You can do this.
Also, those are called rectangular bony plates covering body.
Okay. So go back into step 2, cross out ridges and put rectangular plates covering body. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Great.
Rectangular bony plates.
Bony plates.
Covering body.
Covering the body.
That's a lot of words.
Too many. I'm just going to say ridges.
Ridges.
Okay. So here we go. Step 1, I'm just going to do a light wash of pink. Now, lucky for us, this pink is a light value naturally, so I don't need to water it down too much. And I'm just going to go along and just across my entire seahorse, I'm going to fill it in with pink. So how I usually like to paint in general is I'll get my paintbrush damp, hit it off the side of my cup so it's not dripping, grab some paint, put it on any area, and then working fairly quickly, I'm going to use mostly water to spread it around. Now, one thing I want you to be careful of, especially if you're newer to watercolor, is you either have a tendency to use not enough water or too much water. So you have to find a balance. If you're not using enough water, then you will have a very dry texture when you're painting like so. See how that has a dry? Can you see that very well?
Yeah.
So if you're getting these rough textured lines like this, not a smooth line, your brush is not damp enough. Also, I'm avoiding the fin when I'm filling in this pink. If you have too much water on your paper, then it will start to pool and lay on top of your water. So that's why I hit my paintbrush off the side of my cup to get rid of the excess water. So just kind of cover this whole thing with pink. Now you don't need to worry too much about making this a completely even wash. And when I say even wash, I mean the values don't change. As in, see how like this area is a little bit darker than this area? That's okay. Don't stress out about this. This is just the underneath painting. We're going to be painting on top of this and adding a lot of paint on top of this. So it's okay if there is an unevenness in value and it's not perfectly smooth, or if you get some texture lines in there. If anything, I actually like to celebrate those because they make your artwork unique, and there's an element of accidental art in there, which I think is fabulous. Okay, and then I just need to do the head. I'm going to avoid the entire eyeball though. I'm not going to put any pink on that. If you have already, since didn't say that at the beginning, don't stress. It's just a light value anyway, so it won't be a big deal, but I'm going to avoid it for now. Or if you did do it and you're really mad about it, and you just are so mad that you can't get past it, we're only on step 1, so just like throw that away and do another one.
Yeah.
You can do this. Not a big deal. Okay, that's step 1. You guys are doing great. Now we're going to move on to step 2. We're going to put in, I'm just calling it the ridges. This is going to take a little bit longer, so just warning you. Okay, now what I have here outlined are where you want to put in the shadows and where the areas are going to be left alone, as in we're not going to put any paint on them. This is where it's really handy to have a reference photo. If you buy our subscription or the kit, the reference photo comes with it, but you will have a visual of what parts you need to leave alone or which parts you need to add value to. But essentially, these squares here are where we're going to put those darker values. And the reason why we're doing this is when you put a darker value on an area, it will push it away. So with the Seahorse, if you think of it, they have a boniness to them. They have a structure. And so we have to show that the structure sticks out, and then there's parts that go back in too, kind of like face, like a skull. If you were to do the skull, it would be the same thing, right? Some areas go away, some stick out. The best way to do that, to communicate that when you are painting or drawing or anything, is making something a darker value. It will automatically push it away, and the lighter value will stand out. So I'm going to switch to my round 2. I'm going to grab some magenta, and then I'm just going to start adding the magenta here. Now, again, I like to start off with putting my darker color down, and then I grab a little bit of water and use water to kind of spread it out. And we kind of want there to be a transition in value when we're doing this, which is there's going to be a darker part and a lighter part. So when I do like this square right here, the part that's right by the highlighted part is going to be the darkest value. And then I'm going to dampen my brush and then transition out from there. So this should be the darkest part, and then it should lighten as you go out. You see that change?
Yes.
The best way to do that in watercolor is just add water to it. That's how you get a lighter value. And also, you can add a little bit of deep yellow to your magenta to get like an orange, and you can introduce a little bit of orange to these ridges as well. I'm not going to give you a specific formula and say like every other one add orange. There was no rhyme or reason to the ones that I added orange. I did it just on what I felt like, and you also have that same right. So whenever you feel like maybe you don't like orange and you don't want to do orange at all, you don't have to. Not a big deal. So you can see right now, I know this doesn't look like much. It kind of looks sectiony, but as you start doing this throughout, then you'll notice that these parts that we're leaving light pink and not touching, those are going to stick out and you're going to see a structure. So with any painting, especially if you're not used to painting, you judge it like in the beginning, and you can't do that. You have to wait until it is done before you can make a decision on it, right? Because right now this doesn't look like much, but that's because we're not done. So give your painting a chance before you give up on it, is the point that I'm making.
Better yet, give yourself a chance before you quit.
Exactly. Give yourself a chance to be good at this. So now I'm kind of doing multiple squares at once, where I'm putting the darker area in and then blending out to save time. This will really only work if you are a faster painter. If you just take a little bit longer to paint, then I would do it section by section, because the longer you wait to blend out a color, like the longer you let the color dry on your paper, the harder it is to blend out into a smooth line. And if you go outside the lines, don't freak out. I just went outside the lines and it's okay. I don't feel like this painting is ruined. Probably no one will even notice it.
It's a birthmark.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just a funky little ridge, you know what I mean? Nature's weird. You know? We got funkiness all over. I was gonna say all over ourselves, and then I'm like, let's not.
We got funkiness all over ourselves.
I got funky, weird arms that bend in a weird way. Actually, one time when I was in high school, I pretended in my math class that I broke my arm because I'm able to bend it a lot in the way it shouldn't bend, and my teacher believed me. It was pretty funny, but she was mad when she realized that I
like
was
some
just
kids
kidding.
try to skip PE, you tried to skip math, is that what it is?
1,000% not good at math. I don't know, you might have seen me do math a couple of times on this.
Yes.
On this YouTube channel.
I think I've tried to emphasize the math at one point.
It's not pretty. But she was nice. I actually passed that class because she let me do an interpretive dance about my scientific calculator for extra credit.
That is amazing.
So she understood that I had skills other places and let me use those skills to pass that class.
To learn math.
To pass. She was really nice. Okay. So I'm still just, you know, spreading things out. And don't be afraid if you like want to just be like, what would happen if I just dropped yellow in there? Oh, that's kind of cool. Try it, you guys. Try dropping in other colors just to see what happens. This color was just pure yellow. I didn't blend it with orange. I just dropped straight yellow into there, and I like what that did. So, you know, take a chance, try something, experiment. Okay, now we're starting to see kind of a pattern and a structure with what we're painting and making here. So it's probably one of my favorite parts when I'm painting and drawing, when I start adding the values, because that's when it starts to become dimensional. And I think that that's when things get interesting. And then these kind of little ridges go all the way around the tail. So just keep with it. And you'll see that like each ridge kind of value like changes in color a little bit. I'm okay with that. Like this pink is different from this pink. This is more of like a red pink and this is more of a purpley pink. Doesn't bother me. I like variation in color though, so that's just me. If that does really bother you, you want it all to be the same, then just make sure you're using the same mixture of color when you're doing this. Okay. Again, just try and make sure when you're painting these that you do have a transition in value. It's darkest right next to the highlight. That's where the value is the darkest. Bless you.
Thank you.
That was the quietest sneeze I've ever.
I don't like holding in
Was that
sneezes.
painful?
Oh, it hurt my throat. I was curious to know how large or not large seahorses actually were.
Yeah.
So I Googled up their size.
Oh yeah, how big are they?
Seahorses range in size from 1.5 to 35.5 centimeters,
Oh.
which equals to 0.6 to 14 inches.
I have seen tiny, like itty bitty baby ones at like aquariums.
And they're like almost see-through.
Yeah, they're like this big.
They're tiny. But it makes me question how accurate the Aquaman movie was.
I haven't seen that.
They were riding on seahorses.
Were they?
Yes.
Okay, so we got through the tail. Now where this kind of tail curls in, it gets a little bit tricky, just because it curls in. So you're like, which part is dark, which part is light? So first of all, take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay. Second of all, I'm going to start off with like this really centered dot right here, and then just do the swirl around. This is the underside of the tail. It also has a dark value, and the reason why, if you're looking at the seahorse, on this side it's dark and also on this side it's dark, it's because this seahorse is a three-dimensional form, which means it has another side. It rounds around. So we want to communicate that this body comes out and then goes back in, the same with our bodies. If I'm looking at you, right, I'm coming around at you, and then also I'm going around the other way, right? Because I'm 360. Yeah, I go all the way around, right? Math. I'm really good at it. Anyways, so you highlight, you leave lighter values on the middle to show that it's sticking out, and then it's darker values on the side to show that it's turning away. That's usually true for most cases. The only time that wouldn't be true is depending on the light source. For example, if there's a very strong light source that is shooting right at the belly or right at the back, then that would actually be highlighted. So that's a general rule in terms of values shading at the side to show that they're going away from the light, but always pay attention to the light source because that will actually inform you on where your values should be. So I have on the underside of my tail this darker value. we're moving on now to step 3. So we're gonna do the shadows on the belly now. I'm gonna switch to my round 6, just because I can fill a bigger space at a time, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can stick to your round 2. And just for variation, I changed the color a little bit to more of an orange yellow on the belly. You don't have to do that, but that's what I did. So I'm gonna go along the belly with my yellow. And you see that I have kind of some sectioned off similar to the ridges that we have on there. So I'm gonna define those. Use a little water to blend them. And the other thing that I want to say too is with these outlines, I do have a line of kind of where the shadow stops or the value changing stops, but you don't have to listen to that so exact because we don't want this painting to feel blocky, right? We don't want it to feel like a coloring book. So if these kind of extend out a little bit longer than what's outlined, that's okay. We just want the transition to be natural. So if you need to go a little bit farther out than what's outlined, that is totally okay. You do what you got to do. Now, right underneath this jaw, right here in this neck area, it's going to be pretty dark in value. And that is because the chin itself is casting a shadow on the neck and the body, and it goes in a lot. So we really need to show that that goes in, it's casting a shadow, so you do a dark value. And that's going to also make your jaw stand out a little bit more. Ooh. Okay, I just cut in my jaw so it's not as round as it was. Do you see that? Now that I did that shadow,
yes.
It's like sharper.
It's got that 5 o'clock shadow.
I'm just gonna lighten up that sharp line that I just accidentally did. I'm just gonna use damp water to lift up that extra color. And now I got my round shape back. Okay, great. So I'm just kind of spreading out this darker value here. I'm letting the light pink that I initially put down in the very first step be our highlight. Now it gets a little bit messy on this tail, that's okay. Just have fun with it. And again, I'm just kind of taking a damp brush and blending in between just a little bit, just between the inside of the fish and the ridges. Again, because I'm trying to avoid that really strong, blocky look. Now, one thing that I'm noticing from my reference photo and from what I just painted is in my reference photo, I actually have a pretty strong darker value on these as well that I don't have here. And so I just want to illustrate the differences. By having that strong value on this side, it gives it more structure all the way through. This, since it just transitions smoothly, it feels like it just goes to like a smooth belly, where this, I feel like there would still be structure and ridge if I touch this, right? Because the value is darker, so I could like feel the structure, where this feels more smooth and round. So I'm going to go back in and put in those darker values on the edge here because I like kind of how that feels a little bit more structured across the body. And this just is a great example of how darker values really communicate the structure of things. Now that feels more like a ridge. And I'm just going to do a slightly darker, just a little, just a stronger hint of a darker value right on the belly. Not on the belly, on the, what would this area be? The beginning of the tail.
I don't want to say what I researched, what its name is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that is step 3. Another thing I would like to just stress is you can always go back and make adjustments, okay? So don't, just because we passed doing the ridges doesn't mean you can't go back and tweak the ridges more if you notice something later on that catches your eye. You have the freedom to do that. This is your painting. And I just want to darken this tail just a little bit more. Really layer that. There we go. Okay. Looking good. Okay, now we're going to move on to step 4, the head. Okay, so for the head, I kind of went a little bit more yellow on the top and on the nose. Just for variation, again, you don't have to do that. If you want to keep yours mostly pink, you can. You don't even have to do these colors. You can do whatever colors you want. You can do, I feel like seahorses are a bunch of different colors, so really you have the freedom to kind of do what you want. I'm going to put yellow on the snout.
I found a solid purple one.
Ooh.
It's really pretty purple.
Is it like a blue purple or a pink purple?
It's a pink purple, I think. It's like a vermilion?
I don't know that color.
Dang it. Maybe I'm
I thought
wrong.
vermilion was green.
Well, it probably is.
So I'm kind of just on these little spikes that are sticking out. I'm putting this yellow. And then I'm going to use just my damp brush and water to kind of spread the yellow out.
Vermilion is a red.
Oh, that's right, that's right. It's like an orangey red.
Yes.
I was thinking of Viridian.
Viridian.
Okay. Now what I'm going to focus on is the eyeball. So here we have the round eye sticking out. This like ellipse shape on the right side, that's the shadow that we're going to create. So we want to, again, we want to show that the eye is popping out from the body. In order to make that eye pop out, then we have to put a shadow from the body that it's popping out from. That's how it's going to make it come out and push the body back and show that they're on 2 different planes. So I'm going to get some of my magenta. I'm going to load my paintbrush because I want it to be a dark value. I'm going to grab a little bit of orange, and I'm going to kind of, the darkest part is going to be right around the eye. And then you can just use water to kind of blend it out a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of keep this color going all the way through to the jaw. But just by putting that darker value in, that's going to pop the eye out. Oh, shoot. I'm just doing another yellow of layer at the top because I just wanted a stronger color, just more. Sometimes one layer of color is just not enough.
I love those yellow layers.
They're nice.
They are.
Okay, now when we do the eyeball, sorry, I just noticed a ridge that I didn't fill in. Okay, when we do the eyeball itself right here, we want to do as dark of a value as possible. So I'm going to put a little bit more magenta on my thing. And I'm just going to mix all 3 colors together in the hopes of by using strong color and a lot of color and heavy paint, that will just make a darker, I just want the value to be dark. I want to make as dark a value as I can because we don't have black and we're not mixing black, and that's fine. You don't have to have black or like brown to make something dark. What we're trying to communicate is not necessarily the color, but just how the value, by putting in different values, it can still do the same thing. So I'm trying to show that this is just a tiny little big eye. And I'm going to try and leave a little white dot for glare at the top. I didn't quite get there. I kind of filled it in. And I'm going to do another layer of this. And you might have to do a couple of layers because that's not as dark. It needs to be darker than anything else on your painting. So that's not dark enough. So you got to do a couple layers sometimes, but wait for it to dry. It won't darken if it's still light, but that's okay. We'll come to it, back to it. Now, for the rest of the eyeball, like the top part, I'm just going to do a light pink wash. And then on the right side, I'm going to introduce just a medium value here, because that's just going to give it a little bit more form. If we just do one even value across the entire thing, it will flatten it. We want to show that this is round, it's three-dimensional, so we need to introduce a medium value. Now, after doing that and things have dried a little bit, I feel like my shadow value for the eye needs to be darker. So I'm going to do another layer of where this eye is kind of popping out from the body. Transition that out. And then I'm going to blend it here. Okay, and then we're going to give that a moment to dry, and then we'll go back in and do another layer and try and darken up the center of that eye. If you cannot get it as dark as you want to get it with these three colors, if you have the subscription, you can totally grab like any other color. Any other color would darken it. I would probably do the berry blue. I think that would introduce a nice dark value to it. So that's an option. I'm just going to wait for it to dry and just do another layer. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to do the fin. The fin I just kept like orange yellow, so I'm just going to do a yellow wash across it. Kind of staying on the light value. But where it comes out from the body is a darker value, so I'm going to mix orange. And I have kind of where this dark orange goes to. Again, you don't have to follow it exactly. It's just a suggestion. Okay, looking good. And then there are detail lines on this fin. I'm not going to do those yet because I want them to be sharp. And right now this is too wet, where if I put them in, they would just bleed out and wouldn't have a nice straight line. So this is still too wet, this is still too wet, so I'm going to move on to the splatters, and then we'll go back into the eyes and the fin. So when you are doing splatters, you have the option of covering up your subject if you don't want to get splatters across it. Since I'm using the same colors that I used for the painting, I don't mind if they overlap because it's the same colors. If you want smaller splatters, you're going to make sure that your paintbrush is not as wet, and you're just going to pick up paint. And you can do splatters two ways. If you want it small, less water, less paint, and you just flick it against your finger, and those are small splatters. If you want big splatters, like huge splatters, you want to make sure that your brush is really, really wet. So I'm not going to hit it off the side of my cup. I want my paintbrush to be dripping. Just be careful because it can drip in a place you don't want it to drip. I'm going to pick up some paint, make sure it's nice and watery and wet, and I'm going to do kind of more of a stabbing motion. And then however the direction that you put your arm, that's gonna be the direction your splatters are gonna be. So if I move my arm like across here, it's gonna make the splatters go this way. If I move my arm across the other way, it's gonna make the splatters diagonal the other way. So just pay attention to that. And you can switch up the colors. And if you don't want it to be super strong and directional and maybe just not a strong line, then you just won't be as aggressive with your stabbing motion, where you would just kind of more just go up and down. That feels good. I want a little bit more pink up at the head since it's just yellow. There we go. And maybe some yellow at the back. Yep, and I just want more here. Yep, okay. Splatters. Fun. Great. Now we're just going to finish up with our detail stuff. So my eye is fairly dry. I'm going to do another layer. Going in with that eyeball. Now my splatters are really wet, so be careful with your wrist because they might smear. So this is pretty much just straight paint that I'm putting on here. Okay, that feels better already, that dark value. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the shadow. Doing another layer around the eye. Yep. Do you see how putting that dark value in just pushes things away?
Changes his whole head.
It's so interesting. And then I'm going to wait for that to dry before I decide if I need to do anything else. You can take this time to look at your ridges and the other part of your seahorse. What's really bothering me that I'm just noticing is I don't have as strong of a shadow on the neck as I did in my reference. So I'm just going to put that in. Using straight magenta, just there. That kind of defines that space a little bit more. If you want to go in and define some of your ridges because you blended them out too much that you lost your dark value that you had to start with, go for it. Again, sometimes that extra layer of dark value just really adds to the depth of what you're painting. Just want stronger color here. Okay. Okay, and then now I think my fin is dry enough to where I can do the thin detail lines. So I'm going to mix some orange. I'm going to use my round 2. Now when you're doing thin lines, you don't want your paintbrush to be too filled with water or paint, because it will be difficult to get a thin line from that. You want to make sure you do a vertical hold so your paintbrush is straight up and down, and light pressure. And I'm just going to kind of follow the shape of the fin. So on this side where the fin goes out, I'm kind of following this shape. And then when I get to the middle, it's going to kind of straighten. And then it's going to start curving the other way.
Push that back down. Thank you.
So I grabbed more paint halfway through. So these are darker and thicker because my paintbrush was filled with the paint. So I'm just going to go back over a couple of the first ones and make them a little bit darker and thicker, so then that way it doesn't look as sectiony, like it just started. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Well, that looks pretty darn good. trying to think if there's anything else. I might go back and do one more layer across this part of the eye. And one more, just medium value on this eye right there. Yep. Okay. I think we're done. I think that looks pretty darn good. Yes. Okay. Good job, you guys. If you painted this with us, I would love to see it. I'm sure you're going to make it your own. I'm sure it's going to look different than mine, and that's okay. That's what we want. That's the amazing thing with art, is we can all paint the same thing, but they'll be different from each other because you're the one painting it and not me, and we all handle things differently. So share it. We would love to see it. If you're on Instagram, you can tag us, Let's Go Make Art, or hashtag Let's Make Art. We have 2 Facebooks associated with our business. We have the business one, and then we also have a private group called Let's Make Art Watercolor. Very wonderful, supportive community, a great place to share your work and to also see how people who are painting this have approached it. So please take the opportunity to look at other art, because that's how you learn. You can be like, oh gosh, I love their color transition, or I love how they did their ridges, or, you know, you can just learn so much from other people. So take the time and share your own work so then people can learn from you. And that's it. If you need any of the supplies that we use, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. You can purchase this as a single kit for 15 bucks and try it, or we have a subscription box. That's a great deal. And you can find all of that on our website, letsmakeart.com. Oh, do you know what I love about seahorses? I've been wanting to say this the entire time.
What?
The males carry the babies.
That is, I actually was thinking about that. That's a fantastic fact.
I would love that so much.
I understand.
That's it.
That is all.
That's all I wanted to say. It's really hard being pregnant sometimes. Okay, so you guys are awesome. Can't wait to see what you've done. That's it. Bye.